Oh, it was a student recognition.
For us?
Scott's the one that's got the lengthy presentations for us tonight.
That's why we put him last.
Thank you.
Good luck, Scott.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Oh, one flew over the
Well,
cuckoo's
we all
nest.
stay till the end, though, right?
Exactly, to support each other, right,
At
Scott?
every meeting.
All right, I think we're ready to start. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the March 2nd, 2016 school board meeting. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Why did they do that?
Let's turn around.
I did it too. Michelle's facing this way.
See, I turned away this way. I didn't even see you, Michelle. John hadn't told everybody. Nobody would have noticed, except we're on TV and all 10,000 residents saw you do that.
Do you want any revisions to the agenda?
I do not, Mr. Chair.
That's all right, Michelle.
So we're going to summary of non-public. From February 17th, Mr. York made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of February 3rd, 2016 as written. Mrs. Lepore, second. Motion carried 401. Ms. Quintana abstaining. Presentations, recognitions, I don't believe we have any.
I do not.
Correspondence, I believe there was one. Derek's not here. It's a young man, I believe that, hold on, let's see if I can find it real quick. Michelle, I don't know if it was sent to you or not.
No, I have not received it.
All right. There it is. From Ethan Wester. He is a student of University of New England. Taking an American Education course and would like to come into one of our school board meetings to take notes for part of the program. And I explained to Mr. Ethan that the meetings are open to the public, and anytime he'd like to come, he's more than welcome. And I sent him the dates of the meeting, and I'll forward that to you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I believe that was the only one. Now we have approval of draft minutes from 2/17/16.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
Further questions, concerns? Not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 400.
You have public hearing
Yeah.
ones, too.
Right, draft minutes from 2/17/16. This is the second set of minutes.
For the public hearing, I'll make a motion to accept the public hearing minutes.
Second.
Further discussion? Not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Community forum. So going to superintendent comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one area I'd like to address. Over the last month or so, we have had within the district a group of employees who have petitioned the PELRB to form an association under the New Hampshire Education Association. And there were a total of 102 employees that were certified to be members of this association. And we had a vote about a week and a half ago. And in that vote, I believe there were around 82 out of the 102 members that voted. And the vote was 62-20 in favor of forming the Litchfield Education Associates Association. That would include people like the administrative assistants, lunchroom attendants, custodians, and others. And we will shortly be getting a letter from the organizers from the New Hampshire Education Association to have meetings and start negotiations on developing a CBA that would govern their terms of employment. So we will be having that starting probably in several weeks. And again, there are 102 employees that will be in this Litchfield Support Staff Association. Thank you.
Thank you. I just double checked, Superintendent, just for clarification, it was 61 votes for and 22 against. 83 voted.
I inverted the last two numbers.
Thank you. That'll bring us to school board comments.
I have, in the March edition of Parenting New Hampshire, there's an article in there about the Every Student Succeeds Act, passed in December of 2015, which is taking the place of No Child Left Behind. And it a couple pages, so I won't read the whole thing, but basically it is, the gist of it means that the process of educating the schools is coming back out of DC and back into the states. So in this case, the Department of Education in New Hampshire. And I guess the question I have to our administrators and such is, now that it's been about 2.5 months, what are we hearing out of Concord on this, and how is this going to begin to impact the development of the rubrics that we have? Because they talk about in this article of how to determine successful schools, successful teachers, and going about successful administrators, and going about doing peer reviews and reviews on that. And I know that we have spent probably numerous amounts, if not we, but staff has spent numerous hours in working on a rubrics and a process for that, only to now have something brand new being thrown into the mix, and how that's going to play out over the process that we were supposed to have done a year ago.
I was going to say, so we know that research supports peer evaluations, so we encourage our teachers at the high school, a number of them do peer evaluations. That's where, if they go into each other's classroom and give each other feedback, that's where the most growth is going to happen. So I still think it's important to do the work that we're doing with evaluations, but also understanding the importance of teachers evaluating each other and giving each other critical feedback.
The district's been very engaged in looking at what is the best way to encourage teacher growth in Litchfield, and at the same time be in compliance with federal and state regulations. Towards that end, Scott and Tom have led 2 separate efforts, one to develop the rubrics and one to develop the SLOs, and Tom and Scott both reported back to the board about those. And I think what the bigger change that I'm seeing right now is that where we're looking at mandating that we had 20% of the teacher evaluation system having to be tied to student learning outcomes. That was part of the NCLB for anybody who had Title I school. That will no longer apply, that we have to mandate do that. I think the good news about that is we can really take a good look here in our district to see exactly what is the best way to evaluate teachers, not just evaluate, but as I keep saying, provide them with professional development and growth that's appropriate to what they need. I do believe that student learning outcomes are still going to be part of any growth and evaluation tool, but I think now we can craft that tool the way that it really is an advantage to us. Beyond that, I think a lot of the rules and regulations, I was just actually looking at the technical advisory that came out last month regarding this, and a lot of the rules and regulations that are being developed by the federal agencies and then migrating to the state won't even be in place until the fall. But I think immediately we're going to be, Scott and Tom are both combining together their efforts to work on the larger group, which is the total growth document for teachers. And I think the immediate question that we all have to answer is what's best for Litchfield in terms of the components. I don't think it's going to impact that much the rubrics. I think the student learning objectives there'll be some discussion about. But I would ask if Tom and Scott wanted to maybe give a little bit more information, or if your perspective is a little different from mine, or if you had anything else to add to that at this point.
I can just talk. So in terms of how the work broke out, we had 2 committees. I chaired the Student Learning Objective SLO committee. SLOs are really They are student achievement goals that staff set, teachers set based on a baseline that they establish, and then looking at growth, and that students are showing growth over a term of time, typically 1 year. And there are, in our district, many content areas, specialists, and different areas that, that these SLOs will be developed. There's different ways that you can approach developing these goals. You can do it through sort of a joint effort where everybody, all teachers, all staff are working toward the same goal and the same growth in that specific area. For example, it could be writing, it could be reading, it could be literacy. And then the goals can be more specific to content areas and grade levels, and they are, really fine-tuning their area and looking at data specific to their content area. So what we've done on our committee is developed a framework around the goal-setting piece, what the requirements are, and there's a lot of districts that have transitioned to this model already in our state and nationally, so there's a lot of good work out there and good research-based information out there. We took a lot from the Department of Ed and other districts and developed that framework. And the next step now with this joint committee will be to look at that process of how that will fit into the bigger support and evaluation document for the district for all of these groups. So, as Superintendent O'Neill stated, what the latest technical advisory has sort of, and I think it's so preliminary right now, where this did happen in December, but I think the states are right now, really, we're in the real phase of really looking at how it will impact each state, and New Hampshire is doing that. But the technical advisory, as far as how it would affect our committee and the SLO work, is I think it does give us a little more control, sort of how this will look in our district, and how the SLO piece will fit into teacher evaluation. It gives us a little more freedom, I think, around how that will look. And so the next phase now with our merged committees, the teacher evaluation and the SLO committee, will be to develop this bigger document. So, as a matter of fact, today we were just at staff meetings at LMS and GMS, fielding some questions from staff and answering questions they had about the process and the next steps for the district. So.
One other area they talk about in here is they talk about Smarter Balance, which replaced NECAP, and unlike NECAP, Smarter Balance tests include extended response and technology enhanced items, as well as performance tasks that allow students to demonstrate critical thinking and problem solving according to Smarter Balance. However, PACE, which stands for Performance Assessment for Competency Education, is an assessment program that, in lieu of multiple choice questions, is intended to include complex, multi-part tasks and ask students to apply what they've learned in sophisticated ways, according to the New Hampshire Department of Education. So far, Sanborn Regional, Rochester, Epping, and Sohegan school districts have agreed to pilot the program that was designed and developed by the districts themselves and validated at the state level according to state officials. Now, I know that we may have talked briefly about that, I don't know, a year or so ago or whatever. And I know under Brian, the school board had conversations about trying to be part of that pilot program. Do we have any idea where that's headed, or if we're looking to be part of that program in our schools?
I'm going to ask,
Anybody?
Dr. Heon, can you give me some information on that? Give us more information on that?
Sure. They've already chosen the schools for the cohort for 16-17, and we certainly are looking at the future cohort. Right now, the schools that are piloting it, we're waiting to get the data from that. There's difference of opinion as to whether or not the students whose data was submitted to the state in the fall as part of, in lieu of Smarter Balanced Assessment, or actually last spring, but the data that came out last fall, there are reports that those students actually fared better but then again, their assessments were scored locally. The plan is not that every year all students 3 through 8 would only do performance assessments that were either derived locally or through cohorts. Those 4 schools happen to work together on their assessments. And so we've really taken a position that we want to wait 1 more year and see what that data shows. We certainly have embarked on performance-based assessments throughout the district. 2-3 years ago, we sent several cohorts from each building to participate in what was called QPA, Quality Performance Assessments, where teachers learned the strategies behind creating both well-constructed and valid assessments that, in other words, if another teacher scored those same papers, would the students fare the same, that kind of thing. We have limited energy. I guess this is the place to sort of explain that despite the fact that we're a small district, we have as much curriculum and instruction work to do as a place like Manchester and Nashua. And we've really been on a fairly decent fast track in terms of revising all of our subject areas so that they would conform with the K-12 competency assessment requirement with the indicators that you've seen, and to build instructional units that you've also seen samples of. Within those unit designs, Stage 2, for instance, is all about assessment, where we've tried to emphasize performance-based assessments. In the limited time, again, in the early release and workshop days, there has been some time for the teachers to meet in teams or departments so that they could vet each other's assessments. That's really the key to teachers, creating them individually and then vetting them through using certain protocols to help improve them, and then have common assessments among teachers who teach the same courses and so forth. So we certainly have been doing some of that. I think that we need to have some more deliberation about whether or not we want to embark on this statewide path of using performance assessment in lieu of standardized the Smarter Balance testing in some grade levels.
And just, no child left behind waiver will expire on August 1st, as we probably all know that. But, and they go and talk a little bit, Monadnock Superintendent Witt said the law is a step in the right direction. Over, he says, it looks as though we'll have more state and local control, which in turn means we'll be able to best address the needs of the students of New Hampshire and in our individual districts. As for how they will accomplish that, he says they've already started. Beginning in April, the state is planning on convening teams of educators, parents, administrators from around the state to start filling in some of the details of what factors other than yearly standardized tests will be used to determine the success or failure of a school, what the consequences and supports will be needed for failing schools and such there. So, I mean, in that process, are we as a district have some of our personnel that will be represented on those teams or such, or?
I don't think we know that yet. It's, at our state meeting 2 months ago, Mr. O'Neill and I heard that the commissioner was convening these 3 separate teams or committees, if you will. Some are totally going to be public people and others will be educators. And I don't think anybody's heard whether we've been asked to serve. It's not like every district will get a person on any of these committees. We're hoping that that will be the case. We've had, I've served on the accountability task force, but that hasn't met for a year. So things are a little bit up in the air in Concord these days.
Going to come fast. In closing, I believe that that program and stuff is probably something that the school board needs to stay in touch with. So I would strongly recommend that, at least on a quarterly basis, the board have an update from administrators, principals, and stuff, exactly how this new program is going to be impacting their schools and the learning process for the students, because this is a very different direction from where we've been following for the last 14 years. And not only should the school district know about it, but parents should know about it also, because it is a different change and a different environment in that sense. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing. The SAT test for students was given today as their test, and we had 82 of our juniors completed the test today, and those answers are going off. We had 12 that are going to have to do some more work tomorrow. And then we did have a group of 11 students that will be taking the test at the next date. So I want to congratulate Jody Callanan and the staff, her team up there, for doing an outstanding job the first time through and making this go without any problems. And I also, I would like to thank the weather gods for keeping it from being freezing rain this morning, because if we did have a 2-hour delay, we couldn't have given the test today. We would have had to reschedule them because we couldn't afford more than 90 minutes before we just couldn't give the test. So it worked out great. The kids were great. Jody and her team did a great job, and we'll see how we do.
George, do we have 100, will we have 100% participation?
That would be the goal, absolutely.
Any other school board comments? The only one I have is just to remind everyone out there that next Tuesday, the 8th, is Election Day, so please get out and vote. And that'll bring us to principal reports, and we'll start with Principal Leckleiter.
Okay, thank you. So nothing really specific to the report tonight, a little bit of a toss salad. I'm going to start with some recognitions. First, our boys basketball team won the championship a few weeks back. It was an exciting season for them. They won most of their games, and pretty dominant performance in the championship as well, so congratulations to them. Our Spirit team also won their championship, the Tri-County Championship. Congratulations also to them. So it was a very successful winter season. And then I got an email last week that you might recall last year, Javier Martinez was our geography bee winner at the school. He advanced, first time in a long time that we've had a student advance all the way to the state final out in Keene State. And he advanced again this year. He was our school champion again, and now has advanced and will compete on April 1st at that level. So congratulations and good luck to him. I'll give you an update next month. Hopefully he'll advance. The next round would be, I think, regional and then national from there. So
How did you do last year, Tom?
he was eighth place. And this year, when he took the test, it's a written test, pretty involved. Kathy Sidlow is our coordinator. She said he was done in like 5 minutes. He just knew the stuff so quick. He's just really quick. He studies it. He really is interested in geography and does a nice job. So the bee was at our school bee this year. It was actually very competitive. Demi Dion came in second. She did a great job, another 8th grader. But they had a back and forth for a while in the final round. So I'll give you an update next month. And then one other thing that was real exciting before the break, we raised over $800. Our Unified Arts team every year puts on a dodgeball tournament. And if I could, I can't even articulate and capture in words the spirit and the excitement that this tournament brings for a week. Some of you might have come to a game, but it was really fun. We had a pep rally the day before break and did the big championship. Kids were really into it. Our staff had a staff game, all dressed up and goofy and stuff. We had a big spirit day that day. But underneath it all, it's a fundraiser for Project Safeguard. They raised over $800, so a really good cause as well. And I also want to thank Mark Cloutier, as a parent of a student in our school, not an 8th grader. We have our DC trip coming up. Every year we do Krispy Kreme donuts. I'm not happy Krispy Kreme is opening 4 stores in New Hampshire.
was gonna
Down
say.
on our profits. But that being this, besides the point here, he is going down to Connecticut on Friday, Thursday night, to deliver 1,065 dozen donuts for Friday morning for our DC trip, and he does not have an 8th grader in our school. So I want to thank him, and just, it's a big effort. You guys have heard me talk about Krispy Kremes for a while. But anyway, that's a really big part of our fundraising for the DC trip, so just wanted to mention that. Okay, instructionally, I'm actually going to start with Mr. York mentioned Smarter Balance, so that's a good segue into the next month. believe it or not, we are starting well, we've been planning Smarter Balance. We are actually sort of finalizing our schedule right now, and it looks like we'll begin testing at the end of this month or very early in April. We're going to be starting with 5th grade ELA, so that's coming up very quickly. And we're doing some practice stuff this month, and then again, that'll begin later in the month. Also, I wanted to report that our report cards for the first time were delivered electronically on Infinite Campus at the end of second quarter, and it went really well. I heard a lot of positive feedback that things were pretty easy to upload and smooth on that. So I want to thank Andrea Stern, the teachers, everybody was a joint effort. Our administrative staff did a great job getting all of that done. And that was the first time we've delivered these electronically. We had delivered them through Infinite Campus on paper after first quarter, but now we're full 100% electronic. So that was a good step in the direction of sort of a paperless initiative on that. Let's see. I don't want to read the entire report to you, but one other presentation we had last month, Jason Pelletier presented to the administrative staff on Google Classroom as one option for a digital platform for communication amongst staff, but also between in a classroom digital setting for students to submit work electronically, for teachers to submit assignments electronically to students, and that in the 21st century learning is a big component of the direction we're going in. I know the high school with the one-to-one initiative. So he presented that to the administrative team and then presented it to our staff, and I just think that's a really positive direction, that there's a huge level of support from Jason and his team. And our staff all has IDs. Some of them are using this much more regularly, and we're going to continue to support that and hopefully move more in the direction of using that with kids in a classroom setting. And so the feedback was positive. We have a professional day coming up next week, and there's a group of teachers that are going to be working on some of that, continuing that work with Google Classroom. Google does a lot. And Chromebook is connected to Google, but they do a lot to support education, and a lot of it is free. So that's also a nice piece to how this will work with Infinite Campus. And then I just had a couple upcoming events that I wanted to mention. Of course, I've talked about the DC trip and Project Safeguard. We have our District Arts and Music Festival coming up, and both concerts will be that week. 15th and 17th, chorus and band, and students are getting ready for that. And that is my report.
Excellent. Don't have anything for Ms. Ledbetter? No. So before we go on to GMS, I will say, as far as the dodgeball, I was there for quite a few of the events, and I'll say for anyone who hasn't gone, if you want to watch some fun, it's a blast. And I just want to point out two things. Unfortunately, I don't know the young man's name, but it's 5-on-5, and obviously it's elimination. I mean, once you get hit, you're out. And Brooks Donchis was on the girls' team, and she was the last girl on her team against 3 guys, and she took all 3 guys out. But then the next day, I think it was a 5th grader, was by himself, and he took out 4 players on the other team. So it was pretty amazing. They're pretty athletic, a lot of those kids.
You see a lot of swings, and the Unified Arts teachers, they take it seriously. So there's one on each corner. They're reffing. There's a scorekeeper. There's Mr. Gilmore, the phys ed teacher is out there.
The line judge
Whistle,
in the middle.
the line judge. It's dodgeball. The kids really, they
got into it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's all for a good cause too. So
Thank you.
good. All right, Mr. Thompson.
All right. I'm going to talk about the kindergarten thing, but if I could, I'd like to mention just a few things from my principal's report. One is I'd just like to shed some light on the Make a Difference event we had on February 4th. I had talked about it, but not till I saw it did I realize how wonderful it was. The Student Council acted out the book One, by Catherine Otoshi, and they had student readers. There was a narrated slideshow of world leaders who made a difference. Included Martin Luther King Jr., Malala Yousafzai. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that name well. She was the young girl from, I believe, Pakistan, actually, who was shot because she wanted to go to school. And so the kids talked about that, and it was it was by all reports the best assembly we've had for a long time. I'd like to mention the GMS chorus who sang God Bless America at the Manchester Monarchs game on the 20th. And also, for both reading and math, we have voluntary clubs that kids participate in, Tournament of Readers and Math Dash. Math Dash finished up this week. I didn't get the results, but I know there was a lot of excitement. And we had something like, I think it was 59 out of 80 third graders, or something like that. There was a lot of participation. The other thing is that our math tutors hosted a second round of the Parent Math Information Night on February 18th. We had that in the fall, and it was well received, but a lot of parents said after, I wish I could have gone. So they ran a second night, and again, it was really well received. Along the same lines, we have a school-wide event next Thursday, the 10th, which is our winter math and reading carnival. We've done that, I think this is the third year. And we're running a shuttle bus to the middle school in order to have adequate parking. And that'll be from 6 to 7 next week. Just so you're aware, our SBAC testing will begin the third week of March, the 21st, and it'll run right up through April vacation. And then two other things of interest. Bingo night, that's always a big event for our parents, is going to be on Friday, March 18th. But before then, the DI regional meet is coming up, and that's going to be on Saturday, March 12th at Sanborn Regional High School. We have a lot of team participation. The state tournament is scheduled for April 2nd at Nashua North. And the last thing I'd like to mention is an exciting development, I think, in the use of technology. Scott Turcott, our technology teacher, brought to me this program called KidBlog. And it's a very controlled in-class blog that the kids will participate in. The viewing is limited to the students in the class and their parents. So the parents will be able to log in with the kids. It's web-based. But he tightly controls access. The thinking is it will reinforce a couple of IT goals. Digital citizenship, it seemed like a good, safe place to begin that. Communication and collaboration using technology, and also creativity, innovation. Those are all some of the standards in the new ITC curriculum documents. So he's trying to find a way to use the technology we have with the students we have. There will be a parent letter going home, so parents are aware, and it'll be with fourth grade only at this point. But I wanted to share that with the board.
You want to go right into the
Kindergarten?
kindergarten?
Yep. You want to go through your,
Sure. Okay. So, since our last meeting, I've spent a fair amount of time looking at how it would be possible to bring the kindergarten into the building. And at the meeting, there were two possibilities thrown out. One was keeping the portables we have, and possibly reusing them. And then it was also thrown out as a consideration, not keeping the portables. So to give the board two bits of information, I worked this up two ways, what it would look like if we keep the portables and what it would look like if we don't keep the portables. The things I considered are, First, it clearly is an advantage to have all of our students in the main building. That is, for me, a no-brainer. I did go on to say it's a challenge to do that without adding space, even though it is true that we've reduced by grade 1, 2, and 3 over the last 3 years. We've also added a lot of programs that take up space. So just to remind the board of that. We have a second classroom, though it's really not big enough to be a classroom. We have a second space for our burgeoning preschool program. We're up over 40 students, so we can't fit them all in one space. So we use what is room 5, and I'll show you where that is. Room 5 is I'll get to that in a bit. In addition, we took a large classroom, room 18, and made a computer lab and a server room in a room that had been a grade 2 classroom the year before. We have added a music room and bought all the furniture for that, and it seemed like a really important use at the time. And in addition, we had added, we use a small space for a behavior room, so that if we have a student who is in distress, there's a quiet place away from their peers that they can regain control of themselves. So that was really only an office, it was never a classroom. But those are 4 additional functions: music, computer, the server room, along with the computer. In addition, we have 2 math tutoring positions that we had not had before, and we give space for them. And we've added an ESOL teacher in the time that I've been in Litchfield. So each of those places have required space. I just want the board to be aware of that. So in looking at this, I also had to look at industry standards, if you will, for what works with the kindergarten classroom. So I went to the DOE and got the manual for planning and construction of school building, because I know that kindergarten classrooms are specialized in their design and intent. So some of the things that jumped out is they recommend that the minimum size for a kindergarten classroom be 1,000 square feet. That furniture and equipment should be child-oriented and child size, that it should be portable or movable furniture with flexible arrangements, and that the shelving be movable, stationary, and recessed. The idea is that we want active learners, especially at the kindergarten level, so we want to be able to have both active and quiet areas within the classroom. And the other thing that's really key is bathroom accessibility. The standard is that every classroom for kindergarten should have its own washroom. We currently do have shared bathrooms that are 2 between the 2 classrooms. So if you'd like to look at the second page, where I give you current and intended use, Proposal A is retaining the portable classrooms, and Proposal B is losing it. So in both cases, the rooms that are most suitable to give both easy bathroom access and also maximum square footage are rooms 12 and 14. They're adjacent classrooms, right down in the grade 1-2 wing. When we look at the map, you'll see that those are right across the hall, or down the hall, from both boys and girls bathrooms. There are no classrooms in the building with internal bathrooms, so that will not happen if we move the kindergarten in. But these are close. And an important consideration, they're shared with students of similar age. If I move them up to the 4th grade wing, for example, where the current preschool is, then the bathrooms are also used by 4th graders. And given the amount of supervision in the bathroom required for kindergarten, I'm not sure that that's an ideal situation. So if we look at Portable A, Proposal A, in order to move those classes to those rooms, then these are the other changes I would propose. That the grade 2 classroom that's currently in one of those rooms would move across the hall to grade 1. That room 5, which is now the secondary preschool place, that room says 795 square feet, but it's actually only 625 square feet. The reason for that is that 5 or 6 years ago, we added an egress by cutting into room 5. So it's really too small to use as a regular classroom. I would, by keeping the portables, split, we currently have 6 tutors, 3 for reading and 3 for math, who share a classroom. And it's a big classroom, but I really cannot practically fit them into a smaller classroom. So my proposal would be to split them, put the reading tutors in a smaller classroom, and then 3 math tutors and the ESOL teacher into the grade 4 classroom that would become empty. I chose the one closest to the primary wing to cut down on travel time for them. It could be any grade 4 classroom. And then the preschool, we could move to the current portables. So both preschool classes would be in adjoining classes with bathrooms for preschool. Currently, our preschool students have to leave their classroom with parent support and use the adult bathrooms, which we designate preschool bathroom, in the gym lobby. That's where they have to go to. But by being in the portables, they would have appropriately sized fixtures in 2 shared bathrooms. And then the other change would be that the conference room, which is also our teacher's room, could become just conference room. And then we would make room 5, which used to be a teacher's room, would make it a teacher's room again. So that's the proposal if we keep the portables. If we don't keep the portables, the 2 interior rooms that are best for kindergarten are still 12 and 14 because they're larger size rooms and, again, bathroom access, and they're in the primary wing. I would still have to move grade 2 out of room 12 to room 4, move the grade 1 classroom down to in either case, to 740 square feet, room 9, in the grade 1 end of the wing. And then I would have to keep all of the math and reading tutors in a single room, and that would probably be room 10, which is only 745 square feet. That is not ideal. There's a lot of separate activity going on all around the room. I would move the special ed intensive room, which is now room 9 and part of room 10, to where to a 4th grade classroom, as opposed to being in the current preschool. And the reading specialist we have put back in what's currently the behavior room. I put NA for rooms 40 and 41, because those are the portables which, if they go away, we wouldn't have. And then the conference room would continue to be both a conference room and the teacher's designated lunchroom, which is, again, not ideal. So with all of that,
Scott, I'm sorry, can I just ask,
Go ahead.
on the chart of rooms,
Yep,
behind the behavioral room, it just says C? I don't really,
see, that's a boiler room.
I thought, I didn't think it was a classroom, okay.
So the Xed out areas, now we're looking at the big chart. I'll point out some of the areas I've just been speaking about. Room 5, off to the left, in the old part of the building, you can see there's a new hallway right between that and the girls' room, And that's the new egress that the fire department required we put in that part of the building. So that classroom is currently 625 square feet. The Xed-out area is off to the separate, from the rest of the building, is the 1930s building, which is not used for instruction. The other Xed-out areas are the custodial offices, the stage, which is not allowed to be used for instructional purposes. It says special ed 500. That actually is the conference room / teacher's lunchroom. This was an older map. And then the nurse's office, obviously. The 600 on the corner between the main office and the 500, that's the guidance office and psychologist's office. They share. So there's not any part of the building that's not intensively used at the moment.
And what's the blank across from 23 and 24, before the art room?
23 and 24.
Looks like
That is nothing, because, oh, yes, it is something. So there's an art storage room.
That's art
In the
storage.
back of the art room, there's a sink, and then that is storage for art. And then the pink area, room 27, that's the OT room. And then the part of that accessible from there, that's where we have our ESOL teacher working. So that really is not suitable, but it was a space we had. My proposal A would be to remove her from there and put her in a room with 3 math tutors, one of the 4th grade classrooms.
So based on this map, aren't you doing, you have 5 purple, which are the 4th grade classes? Would
Correct.
you be changing one of those to something
No,
else?
because this is current use. That's this year.
That's this year.
Yeah, so room 20 is the one that I mentioned on the spreadsheet. That would be changed to 3 math tutors and ESOL. It could be any 4th grade classroom. I chose that one because it's closest to the primary wing, which is this end up here.
Right.
And they would be going back and forth, so. I apologize, this is kind of messy.
What's
but-
the little, the 2 rooms across from the cafeteria, 17 and 16?
Yep, so
What-
16 is shared by 3 special ed teachers who
Okay.
do small group instruction.
That's what you're looking to move into 20, is that correct?
No,
That would stay that way.
yes, I'm not moving room 16. And then 17 is only 490 square feet, and that is shared by 3 speech and language pathologists for small group work, testing.
All at the same time.
No, so that's the thing, they work out a schedule that sometimes there could be 2 groups, but one might be working in a classroom with students, you know. A lot of preschool services actually take place in the preschool classroom instead of pull out.
And room 37 again?
Yeah, so that's very small, that is 164 square feet.
Okay.
And that was was previously Connie Farrow's office. That's the room that we have made into a behavior room if we have to have a student isolated from the classroom in order to help them regain composure in an upset. Room 10 and 9 are where we currently have, there are 2 purposes there. The intensive special needs room is mostly in 9, but there's part of room 10 is also used for them. But the other half of room 10 is used by Chris Tate, who is the reading specialist now. And so she uses that for small group instruction and reading testing. So 10 is more of a quiet room, and 9 is for intensive special needs. But I think that we could make it work to put the intensive special needs class into the preschool, current preschool, but, and then use 9 for 4th grade classroom and 10 for the reading tutors. So my recommendation is that, and I've given you a list of pros and cons of each proposal. My overall recommendation is that if we would like to do this sooner, before we add the 10,000 square foot addition, then I would propose that we keep the portables, and we could make it work. That would be my suggestion.
Make it work by putting pre-K out there?
Yes, we'd put pre-K into the portables. And again, that would mean they would have bathrooms.
So pre-K is moving, and pre-K is moving out and kindergarten is moving in?
Correct.
Because pre-K doesn't move. Kindergarten right now moves every day to a
Right.
special.
And a lot of, as I said, pre-K services, so special ed, PT, OT, speech, a lot of that happens right in the pre-K classroom, so there's a lot less moving back and forth. Kindergarten is more likely to come out to go to the PT or OT room, which is shared as one room, or to come out for speech, although it can also be in the classroom.
More efficient learning.
Yes, for the kindergarten.
Right.
I don't want to
And for the
overstress.
pre-K also.
Well, yes, I mean, I think that it will be good. A benefit for the pre-K is right now we have one teacher way down here in room 5 and the other teacher way up here in room 25. And this teacher sometimes is in this room, so it's a little bit disjunct. Another key thing for me, I use this color coding because we try to keep our grade level teams together for a variety of reasons. One is that they have common planning time and it's good for them to be close. But a real critical reason for all of those rainy and below 20-degree days is that we have 3 monitors and they have to supervise into a recess for all, a grade level all at one time. Obviously, if the classes are all over the building, we have a problem. One monitor can watch 2 adjacent classrooms by standing in the middle, and they can share if they're all in a line. So we try to keep them together.
Scott, did you say you wanted to move a 4th grade class to 10?
No. I want to move, in Proposal A, 10 is going to be for tutors. It would be for 3 reading tutors.
How about 9?
9 would be for a grade 1 classroom.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought you said you were going to move a 4th grade class down there. I was thinking.
No, grade 1.
All right.
So right now, as we know, we've
Right.
been, the concern till now has been the grade 1 coming in is a smaller class. We're up to 72, so if we, somewhere between 70 and 75, if we stick with, if it's going to be 72, then it might be 18 students. So, it's not ideal, but we had Mrs. Johnstone was in room 10, those
Right.
2 rooms are identical. It can work.
Yep.
So would you be moving first grade into 10, 9, 8, and 7?
No, grade 1 would be then in 6, 7, 8, and 9. They're already in 6, 7, and 8. I would
Okay.
just move
Just take out
room
4,
4
right.
over to room 9, because room 12,
Are you just swapping those 2 rooms then, 9 and 4? Wouldn't be the idea, I'm just listening wouldn't be the idea to try to get the blue closer together? Is that the idea?
no,
I mean,
blue is not a grade.
I understand that, but it's where all of our special services are occurring, is that correct?
No, it isn't.
Okay.
So, it's where some are, I'm sorry, building-wide, those spaces are used for special services, and that includes the tutors, just so you're clear, it's not all special.
No, I understand it, but it's learning that's outside of the regular classroom learning process.
Yeah,
Okay, that's all you wanted to say on that, is it?
yeah,
But, and I see you're trying to move, so inevitably you'll move 4 to 9, you'll move 12 to 4, so that you're putting the second grade classes all together, I think.
yes, yeah. So special services, to talk more about that, they tend to be grade-specific. So, for example, one case manager does 4th grade. There's no reason for me to have her next to, grade 1.
So aside from just moving class to class, Scott, I don't know if you looked into like how much equipment would have to be moved also, from smart boards to, I'm not
Yes.
certain what else would take place.
Certainly all the furniture. We moved a whole lot of furniture last year. We did, I think, 8 moves, and we got it done really efficiently. For smart boards, I did consider that, and I believe that they don't move well, is what IT tells us, but we may need one additional Epson projector. I'm trying to remember if room 10 has one, because that's not a classroom this year, and room 9 did have one, because that was actually an initial grant.
Right.
It was a special ed smart board, but special ed has one. Well, I guess room 8 was the special ed one, but room 9 definitely does have one. That was a PTO purchase. So room 10 might need one,
Okay.
unless they could move it from another space. But they tend to plan on moving it.
Transport them from wherever they manufacture them from, so I'm certain moving it within the school shouldn't be that much of a problem.
Yeah, I would think that as well. They do sound. I don't know if it's labor or actual wear and tear.
And, yeah, it'd be quite a bit of movement too, because you figure kindergarten out, pre-K in, and then the other classes moving both. But, if we're looking to minimize the movement of the children, especially outdoors for safety reasons, it makes a lot of sense to switch pre-K, if we can't fit them all in the building, switching at least pre-K out there and bringing kindergarten in.
Mr. Superintendent, your thoughts?
Me? I think that the pre-K in the portables and the kindergarten inside makes a tremendous amount of sense because of it would cut down on the loss of time when the kindergarten kids and the pre-K kids would have appropriate room, appropriate facilities. I don't think we can migrate all of children inside now. I just don't think we have the square footage to do that at this point in time. So I would fully support Scott's suggestion, and that we do move next year to have the K kids internal and the pre-K kids outside. I think that's a good in-between move, and we'll have to see how the demographics go over the next 2 or 3 years as to if we can make the next move, which would be to have all the kids inside. I think Scott started out by saying that, of course, he would prefer to have all the kids inside. It's the most desirable way to both educationally and safety, but we just don't have the square footage internally right now to do that.
Well, one of the things that Scott mentions in the report also is utilized in the 30s building, and what I was wondering if the warrant article, Frank, was to pass for looking at our building and determining, like, I don't know if that falls in that type of scope, that they could look at the 30 buildings, at least the ground floor.
Right.
That is accessible, then we wouldn't have to worry about handicap accessibility at that point.
Right.
And utilize maybe those 2 rooms for the specials, or, because those are 2 huge rooms.
Right.
You know,
The
as far as what it would.
The report can include anything we wish for it to include. And obviously, we could write the specifications as such that they would look at that specifically for the ground floor use for educational purposes.
We can utilize the ground floor use. I mean, it takes 2 huge, I mean, I don't know how big those are, but I don't know if you measured the 30s building or not, the ground floor.
I have not, but I don't know if these are, the measurements that are handwritten on here to explain this, I said, Dave, why do we have different measurements? So this was done with a ruler, I mean a tape measure.
Yeah.
And things do change, like room 5 changed, 18 is no longer the same as it was. But the measurements that I put on my chart, they actually, Team Design, which is the architectural firm that builds a lot of schools, they came in and used a laser measurement.
Okay.
So their measurements.
Because I'm looking at this, if this is the 30s building down, it says 525, but it's bigger than 525 square feet. One of those
I would
rooms.
think as well.
Yeah. But I'm just thinking, if we can, and looking at those when we
Sure.
went toward them a few months back,
Right.
they were in pretty good shape. That didn't seem like it would take a lot,
Right.
at least the ground level, and use the upper for storage.
Yeah.
And that in the following year, I mean, if it could get done, or a warrant article could get passed to fix those rooms up,
We can include it.
you know, and then you stop and think about what it would cost. So you take the portable now and bring it to LMS, by then, hopefully you only need one. You junk the other two, they don't cost you anything, and you save the money. You're paying for lease.
It looks to me on this very small diagram, even with my good glasses, it looks like 530 square feet for that first room. And then there's a toilet area, and that's 270 square feet, and then they have 440 square feet for the other classroom.
Yeah.
But that could serve for some of the non-classroom purposes, for sure.
Yeah.
Is worthy of consideration.
Does anyone have any other questions? All right.
Just for Scott's preparation, Mr. Chair, is the board kind of going along with Scott's recommendation that we move the pre-K students outside and the kindergarten students inside, so he can start making preparations for assignments and things like that?
I think so, but I think maybe,
A little more information?
yeah. Yeah, obviously, time's of the essence. I mean, you don't want to find out, a month before school starts next year, but I think it's definitely something that the board can look at and think about. I mean, there's a lot to think about. I mean, again, the whole idea was hopefully to get all the kids inside, and realizing we can't do that. It seems like the more room you get, the more room you need. Right now, it seems like, I'm thinking like 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, you had 3 more classrooms. Now you don't have them, but yet they're filled already with the specialists. So I can only imagine what it was like for them. They're probably stepping on each other before.
To put what?
They're probably stepping on each other before. Now at least they have a little bit of breathing room to do what they need to do.
Well, we had no computer lab.
Yeah.
We had music on a cart. We had only one math tutor who shared one room with 3 reading tutors.
Yeah.
So that was only 4 people. We're up to 6 people because we've added the support. We had no server room. It was in the back of the library. So, those things all take space, so.
Yeah. What I'd like to do is, if we can put this on the agenda for our next meeting, if we have room, where the board may change, and before we make a decision like that, as far as this board, someone may be parting, someone may not be, that we can have further discussion on it, or, if there's any other ideas that people think about in between.
Okay.
Thank you very much, though. It's a lot of good information. And you thought you were last, Scott, but we save the best for last, right? This is the Rothaus.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So a couple things. Last weekend, on Saturday, February 20th, Campbell High School hosted the state wrestling competition, and Campbell High School actually won Division III, so they were state champs. The director of the NHIA congratulated our community on such a great organized event. We do have Mark Boomhauer, who is going to New England's in Providence next weekend, which is huge. Our swim teams, we had state champions too, Grant Levesser, Mike Douglas, Trent Levesser, and Will Bauer. The boys' basketball team won last night in Berlin. They got home very, very late, and then we had a number of them who had to take SATs today, but they actually had more energy, I think, because they didn't have a lot of sleep, and so we're really proud of them. Instructional highlights, our retake committee has been working really hard to look at the amendment to the retake policy. The PLG was led by Phil Martin, Justin Ballou, Catherine Gorman, Patrick Keefe, Sean McDonough, and Bill Pothier. We still have more work to go back to the committee before there's any presentation to the school board. We actually had our parent forum tonight, and one of the things that they discussed and spent a lot of time is today our safety committee had a drug speaker. The speaker was a 2014 graduate of Elverin High School who spoke about when he was at Elverin, he was actually shooting heroin in the bathrooms, and how he came from a great family, and how he was really not the kid that you would ever think would be addicted to heroin. It was a very powerful message, and our parents were grateful that we had that. Some other instructional highlights is, I wanted just to go over our update on data. Angie is actually the chairman of the committee. When she found out I was doing this, she wanted to come tonight, which we always welcome everyone. So this is just a packet for everyone. I'll have to share with Nate. We didn't kill the tree, but this is just a blanket information. So the front cover, obviously you can see before, it's been updated again. So again, we started in 2007 and 8. We could try to go back and get the scores, but this is just when I started, so that's where we have those numbers. On the math proficiency, again, this is grade 10. You can see that, again, 36.4% of our students were in the highest range. In English, we had 46.3%. Our lowest scores, again, we have a few students who fall in the red zone, and that would really be considered red zone students that we need to do more work to get them where they need to go. There is a comparison of NECAP, and you can see, if you put them side by side, you can see the 2011 results from NECAP, where Litchfield was in the area, and then you can see the 2014 results, so that gives you a comparable, because I know that we always look at how we do compared to other people. So there's just a lot of data here. Again, there's a comparison between 2011, 2014. There's a page on our average daily attendance, students who are involved in extracurricular activities. One of the things we discussed at the parent forum tonight is that students at Campbell High School, they tend to be involved in a lot of activities. So they're not just involved in, if you went to a large school, you might be involved in 2 things, where we have students here who are involved in like 6 things. And they juggle a lot, which is great. Students who are enrolled in our most engaging coursework, you can see that there's been an increase. Student retention is the number of students that make it from one grade to the other, and we've had a lot of discussions about, freshman year is such a critical year for students, because if they pass their freshman year, they're more likely to graduate from high school. Graduation rates are pretty solid, and then attendance at 2- and 4-year colleges. I don't know if Andrea wanted to say anything, being the chairman of the committee.
Hi, all. It's nice to see you all again. I really don't have very much to say. I just wanted to let you know that our group is a very small group, but they're very dedicated to looking at the data that we get from multiple data points and seeing how we can help improve instruction in our district based on what we learn from test results. Principal Rothaus has been very supportive of this work. She has been part of the team from the beginning, and she has kept us moving and kept us moving forward with it. So if you have any questions about what you see, I'm happy to answer those. The longitudinal data looks great. We've been making leaps and bounds. We've moved from some of the lowest scores in the state to up amongst some of the best. And that's, I think, the direction we want to continue to move. Thank you. Welcome.
If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll just continue. Upcoming events.
May I make one observation?
Sure,
Margaret?
sure.
Andrea and Lori and the CF and I had a little conversation, it's just preliminary conversations, but
Sure.
I think one of the challenges that we have in public education, I think we're awash in data. And I think what we have to do is how do we make the data actionable? And I believe that one of the tasks that we all agree has to be done is to take this large amount of data that we have and get it to be really having an impact, being impactful on how kids are being taught. Which kids in what areas need specific kinds of instructional practices. And I know that teachers are extremely busy, so somehow internally, through professional development activities, and I'll make a pitch for the fact that we have a need in all public education for more time for teacher professional development, and/or through data analysis done by Andrea and other experts. We need to make data much more user-friendly for the teachers in the classroom, and also the teachers also have to participate in that. But I think our challenge is, our trend lines, when you aggregate them, look pretty good. There's some areas that we certainly need to improve on. But I think the real challenge is, how do you disaggregate the data to the point where it really has meaningful impact on student learning? And I think that's one of the big things we really have to look at. And I'm sure it's going on a lot more, and I'm not necessarily as aware of it as I should be, but that would be one of the big areas I would like to kind of have a focus on over the next year, is disaggregating data to have impact on student learning. So, thank you very much.
However I can help, thank you.
Yeah. So anyway, upcoming events, we have College Nights for Juniors on March 10th. Large Group Music Festival is the 11th and 12th. Winter Sports Awards is the 14th. March 16th, this is not on your paperwork, but March 16th, we have from 5:30 to 7, we have free physicals for anybody in the district who needs a physical for sports. Scholar athletes are March 14th also. The district art and choral is the 17th. The fashion show is the 26th. The district jazz blues night is the 29th. And just a shout out, Mrs. Berry's class, if you've had an opportunity to look in the main office, they had a contest to design the rug in the main office. It's actually beautiful. It was a great contest, and we're really proud that a student, a class, took that on as a project, and I'd like everyone to take an opportunity tonight just to look in the main office and see that rug. It's gorgeous, and our kids really do great work, so. That's it.
Thank you very much. Now we go to curriculum with Dr. Heon.
I think we'll jump right into the current recommendations. These are 6 films. I know it's listed with ands, and that was my error. I was combining similar films the way the teacher had shared them with me. But there are actually 6 films: Vertigo, Rear Window, Outlaw Josie Wales, Unforgiven, both Westerns, Jaws, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm sure you all recognize one or more of those. Or all of them.
Some of them are pretty old, I haven't seen the old ones.
I'm sure we've seen them on the reruns.
Oh, maybe that's what it was.
Around for the
That's-
original premiere or whatever, but the idea is that in this course, literature and film, students both examine types of literature in similar genres as films, not always the same exact novel and film, and how film portrays a lot of the same literary elements and style that can be found in written text. This course has been offered for some time, showing a variety of films. This particular year, we have 2 different teachers teaching the same course, and under both my encouragement and Lori's, one of the instructors has chosen to restructure the course and is requesting these particular films. Probably the one item of note is that 4 of the films are PG, but 2 of the films are R, Unforgiven and also One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And in those documents, the second document of each called Background Set for Sensitive Material, toward the bottom, number 4, it delineates what might be considered sensitive material taken right from impartial reviewers on these films. What would occur is that although the instructor has, at the beginning of the course in the fall, sent out a permission slip that said some of the courses may be R-rated or whatever, and all of the students returned that, that given 2 of the films that are R-rated, in following the policy on film choice, that individual permission slips would be given for both of those films, for those students. But the instructor feels and concurred that these were exceptional films, and we did spend some time looking for similar films for the compare and contrast aspect of the course, that these seemed like appropriate choices. Obviously, notwithstanding that most 17 and 18-year-olds have probably seen things a lot worse these days, given that back when these films were released, R-rated meant a little bit something different than it probably means today. But in any event, the students would need, signature on those forms for those 2 particular films. And I would commend the instructor for really spending a lot of time to reconstruct this course and choose films that I think that will add to the both social awareness and also the awareness in terms of literature and film for the primarily seniors and a few juniors that are in this course.
So you say it's mostly seniors in the class?
That is correct. It's designed, it's in that category of electives, and for the most part, seniors who have room in their schedule, along with senior English, if that's 1 semester, would be their other semester to choose an elective. We have 6 or 8 electives that students can choose from. Occasionally, a junior will take both the required American Studies English and choose 1 or more electives if they really like the courses or an inter-English.
I just picture Jack Nicholson right now with Earth Ratchet. That's all I can picture. It's medication time.
I'll make a motion to accept the movies.
I'll second your motion.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. 4-0-0.
Great. We're still working on some of the curriculum frameworks. Again, my goal is to have all, except a couple of the special areas, completed by June. Part of it is just time and the personnel availability to complete a couple of those other areas, but the ones that I've named here hopefully will be completed by that time. We may have a little bit of a glitch with one of the subjects where we have a personnel issue that you'll discuss later, but we're hoping that we can get some other folks to step in and finish that. In assessment, last month, I spent some time talking about the professional learning community that the administrators were engaged in since the fall on grading and reporting. And as an outgrowth of that committee, there is a district-wide task force with representatives from all 3 schools to explore what is the practices within the schools, and both guide and report back, to have discussions going back and forth between the schools about what topics are being discussed with regard to grading and reporting. And so what we're working on right now are a set of work study practices. I've listed a few down here. We had our second meeting yesterday. We'll have another one in 2 weeks and 2 weeks after that, where we will tease out some bullet points, if you will, some definitions of what kinds of behaviors or performances that we would see from students in those four categories, and what kind of scoring there would be. Typically, they're different from the academic grading, which is either numeric or alphabetical, and some kind of a code, or 1 through 4, or something like that. That each teacher would report on student performance in these areas, separate from the actual academics, which would be the competency grading. This is not anything that's particularly new to the elementary teachers, students, and families, since they already have a section of their report card that deals with different skills within citizenship and qualities within citizenship. What we're trying to look at is some consistency among the 3 schools, so that as students move from one school to the other, they'll look fairly familiar, whether in the end they'll look identical, or that there will be a slight variation depending on the developmental level of the students, and to some degree what the priorities are in terms of student learning practices there are between the buildings. So as they begin to work toward a more final draft and share that with the staff in each building and get feedback, just like we do with our other initiatives where we're writing documents, I'll give updates to the board so that you will get an idea of what direction that's going in. I'm not sure that I mentioned before that obviously what we're working toward probably a year and a half from now would be a grading and reporting policy. We don't have anything as such right now, and so all of the components of that we've been working on in grading and reporting would ultimately be outlined in that policy. That's about it. It was a short month.
I just want to pick up on Dr. Heon's comment earlier. You know, we're not a big district, and that's one of our great strengths, because we do know our kids really well. But when you look at curriculum, the curriculum that we have is as expansive, and it covers as many areas as a district like Nashua or Londonderry or other bigger districts. And I have to say that I'm very proud of the work that Dr. Heon and all of the teachers and all the principals do to keep our curriculum current and to keep upgrading our curriculum so it does reflect all of the current standards. And it is a lot of work, and I do appreciate the leadership that Dr. Heon provides, and I do appreciate all the work that all the teams do on a really regular basis. So thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Dr. Heon? So we'll excuse the principals and Dr. Heon. Thank you.
See ya tomorrow.
Oh, sorry.
They never stay, do they?
Nope,
Give them an out.
never off.
There, I can give them just this copy.
No, I could just, we'll just, I'll just, uneventful.
I'll
We'll get
email
out
it to them.
Questions I can
Can
send
you
you.
this to recycle?
Enrollment.
Enrollment's really uneventful.
I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to
Sorry.
post it, but I'll email it to you all tomorrow.
Yeah, and just send it to the budget committee also.
I will do that, yes.
Yep. All right, next up is our enrollment report for February.
The enrollment report for February is, as I have stated frequently, somewhat uneventful. Our total enrollment as of February is 1,388 students. Our total enrollment in September was 1,393 students. There's been some immigration, some emigration, but I really don't think there's anything major. We will be posting that and forwarding that to the Budget Committee, and you can review that. If you do have any questions, and certainly at our next meeting, you could ask them.
So you'll forward it to us too?
Yes,
I
sir.
will, I'll email it to you tomorrow.
Both pages?
I'll email you the whole thing, yes.
Excellent. Next is committee reports. I don't think there's anyone here for any committees. Budget Committee will meet again on the 24th, which will start a new Budget Committee and possibly a new School Committee. Then brings us to new business, old and unfinished business. is our policies again.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with policy ADB, drug-free workplace.
Again, I would like to thank Michelle for all her hard work, and certainly I'm going to make a few comments, and I ask Michelle to make any additional comments as needed. The drug-free workplace is really essentially just a revote on a policy that exists without any significant changes at all throughout the policy, as I understand it. So that's just not a revote, but a rehearing of the policy is more appropriate, I guess. So I don't think there's anything that really has changed there.
I mean, it seems like it covers everything.
I make a motion that we reapprove ADB, drug-free workplace, drug-free schools.
A second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain.
Policy ADC, in this policy, we had some requests to
It covers just about everything.
policy code, I don't know what it is. But anyway, we had some requests regarding the electronic cigarette conversation. So we put wording in here that includes tobacco product means any product containing, made, or derived from tobacco that are intended for human consumption, whether chewed, smoked, absorbed, dissolved, inhaled, snorted, sniffed, or ingested. Any other means.
Covers it up.
Did you get those words from the attorney?
I got those from several policies,
Yeah.
they're all the same.
And then it goes on from there. That was worth a little comic relief.
Yeah, it was. The whole thing is.
But it does
Couple
get
of bases.
into a specific, the term electronic cigarettes means any oral device that provides a vapor, et cetera. So this policy just included just about all of the current potential ways that one could get a tobacco product into one's body. So I think that was the intent. So if you have some comments, we certainly welcome
I
them.
think it covers everything. Everything and plus some.
Say so.
What's that? Anything that
No,
you
it
put
does
near,
say cigars.
anything you put near your mouth.
Yeah, that's about it. It was funny, I actually learned electronic cigarettes. I mean, I see people using them. I had no idea what they were, and I've actually learned a little bit more, not a lot more, but it was really kind of, I don't quite get it, to be quite honest with you. I just don't get it.
Something to spend their money on.
So do you need a, just
for it.
approval?
Yeah.
I'll make a recommendation that we accept ADC tobacco products ban as amended, and it's a new policy.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. 400. Now bring us back to EEAG, use of private vehicles to transport students.
In that policy, there were two pieces that had to be changed. One was a policy and one was the forms. This was the policy that we received further update from our attorney regarding a change in interpretation of who could drive students. And the big thing is no school employee, unless they have a bus driver's permit, could drive students in their vehicle unless it was, I'm kind of paraphrasing, and Michelle can correct me, unless it was a vehicle owned by the district that would be considered a mixed-use vehicle. And a mixed-use vehicle could be a van, or it could be a SUV or something like that. But that, we would have to own a vehicle, which we could then allow an employee to drive. Other than that, they would have to have a bus driver's certification to be able to drive students.
Which takes us up to a conversation we had last week,
Yeah.
that there are some situations right now that they're being driven, correct?
Once I on my desk, I have a request from a teacher to drive students to an event on Saturday, and if the board approves this policy, that teacher, that would be in violation of this policy. I'd have to reject that. That is correct.
Correct.
We also have some students who are driven on I wouldn't say a regular basis, but on an occasional basis by a teacher to other programs, and that would also have to cease. We would have to have a bus transport them, or the district would have to consider getting a donation or purchasing a, quote, mixed-use, end quote, vehicle. That would be
So you're better off leasing one. Budget committee would rather have that.
I will just make a comment, just saying. But yes, you are correct. It would change our current practice.
So in reading this, I just want to bring it up, and I know it seems like it comes up every year. But I don't know if it falls under this or if it's totally different. And that's the whole ski thing of transporting. Because again, in here, it's saying use of vehicles and the parent can only drive their child for, I think that's a school activity.
I would agree with that.
So can we,
However, we advertise it as not being a school activity.
correct,
So, if I might, Mr. Chair?
EMA?
Do we have meetings in the school where they discuss this? Do we hand out information in the school about this? Is it sponsored indirectly by the school in the sense that we have personnel that are in charge of this? All of those things, therefore, in my mind, make it a school-sponsored activity, even if we say it is not. To me, it's what you actually do. It's what you're actually doing that determines it, and I believe that if you were to pursue this, we would get a legal opinion that this would be a school-sponsored activity.
So, in the paragraph in which you've crossed out any district employee, and he now starts any private citizen using their own or rented vehicle to provide school-authorized student transportation must have a valid driver's license and must provide proof of auto insurance of $100,000 per person and $300,000 per accident as desired. And then we say that they can't do that. So we're like, we're
They can do it. They take the
But why
child.
if I'm driving my, let's say I'm taking my child,
Yep,
why does the district care whether or not I have $100,000 or $300,000?
it's because it's
of
school,
insurance?
it's a school activity and the school's responsible.
This is for school-authorized student transportation.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go a step further. What would be a school-authorized transportation in which a parent would be driving their kid to?
Field
Which
trip.
we would like to take liability for that.
Field trip, it comes up a lot with field trips if you have a student who gets car sick and on a bus, so then the parent wants to follow behind the bus with their student, it's still a school-sponsored activity. So if there was an accident, the school is still liable for that student in that vehicle that's following a bus or meeting up with a bus at an activity.
Just like coming home from a sporting event.
But if
But-
that
but
parent
then
is
we're-
negligent, then you also, we don't, we would want them to be insured as well. So if they do something while they're
No, they're-
driving,
no,
and
they're
they've
covered.
done something negligent, even though it's a school-sponsored trip, but that parent, say, hits another car, we would want them to be insured as well, I think, not just having us.
Well, we're
provide-
also saying that we're going to maintain a liability insurance, which would be in excess of the owner's primary. So my question is on this is, so, and I don't have a bad driving record, but I'm going to use this hypothetically. Let's say I'm a poor driver, and I have car insurance. I don't have anywhere near what that car insurance process is in there. But I'm driving my son or daughter for whatever the reason may be. You don't know what my driving record is or is not. And yet we're going to insure said driver above and beyond whatever their insurance policy is. I understand the reasons behind it, but I don't believe we want to be well, it's been in there, so it hasn't, luckily hasn't been an issue. But I believe we're exposing ourselves as a district to be a underwriting insurance, having underwriting insurance to an individual in which we have no control over their driving record, and how do we ask our insurance company to become liable for that person? I mean, let's say hypothetically I have an accident.
You have to have that. There's no question. You have to have additional insurance that's going to cover in case somebody's negligence causes an accident. And they can go after that person, but if that person only has so much insurance, they're going to go after the school too, if it's a school activity. We want to have insurance covering whoever might be driving. I think one of the more important issues, it says, they must provide proof of auto liability insurance.
100, 300.
And then it's desired, that this is what's desired. I think we need to say, this is minimum, this is what you need to have. I think we need to tighten up the language and decide how much protection we want that person to have. The other thing that I question on the second page, those providing transportation must have a valid driver's license and a vehicle which has a current New Hampshire inspection sticker. Do we want to throw in and insurance as noted above, or, just...
I don't think you need to do that. I mean, you've already done it once. I mean, you're just being redundant by putting it a second time.
Yeah, I know, but to me, what you're doing is you're using conflicting language. You're saying, at one point, well, it's desired that you have this kind of insurance. So to me, as soon as you say desired, that means that it's not necessary. You're not saying they shall provide it, you're saying they must provide it, which is not as strong legally, and then you're saying it's desired. So right there, you're saying, well, we would like you to have insurance.
Well, I see that as 100,000 to 300,000 is what's desired, not that you have to have insurance.
Right,
Take out the word
okay,
desire,
but-
take out the word desire then.
Okay, but I think it's not as tight as it should be. They could have auto liability insurance, and it might be very minimal. They might not even have collision. But we're saying 100,000 per person and 300 per accident is desired. But somebody can walk in and say, I've got auto insurance, I want to drive my kid.
Why don't we just strike, it
The word
is desired?
Right.
Just put a period after
100,000,
per
300,000 per
accident.
accident.
I think that might take care of your concern.
Okay. And then if we're going to have the language in here that says that a school district employee would have to have a bus driver's or a license to be. Do we need to put anything in there, a provision that says that we would need to look at their driving record? Because I think if we are going to have a teacher or a parent or somebody certified to drive a bunch of students on maybe a rented vehicle or something that we might purchase in the future, do we want to make sure that we can,
Well, I think when you get your bus driver's certificate,
they're going to check their drivers?
I would assume
Okay.
so,
And
yeah.
would we review that on a regular basis?
I would think the state does it.
I don't know.
We'll have to, I believe the state does that on a regular basis, but I would have to get that.
I mean, who would do it for the district, and what are our qualifications to do that, and what are the benchmarks to make someone acceptable versus unacceptable?
Right.
Versus asking for the license and putting that responsibility onto the state,
Mhm.
or
Choose
the
the
issuing
license.
agent. So that's been a discussion that I've heard before.
Mhm.
And it keeps going back to, we're asking for the licensure process to be completed by the issuing agency, in this case, the DMV.
Okay. I don't know what the DMV requires and whether or not they allow accidents or speeding tickets or
Right.
something like that, and you can still keep
I
your
understand,
license.
yeah.
I feel like if you're going to be driving
But you
students...
know what I mean, is
Yeah,
where
no.
was the benchmark versus someone's got 5 tickets, and they're all stop sign violations, versus 5 tickets for going 100 miles an hour on Route 93.
Right.
If I can, just quickly, Mr. Chair, through the insurance issue, the ultimate responsibility for the transportation of a student is the district's. We can't absolve ourselves from that. And once you allow an alternate vehicle, such as the car of a parent, to transport, we are still responsible. So the responsibility to ensure that that vehicle is going to keep that child safe is our responsibility. And how we go about doing that is obviously by adherence to a policy that strictly outlines that.
Is there anything else?
Oh, I was just looking at the school bus drivers. Not in that policy, no. I think that is the end of that. And, the other thing, oh, yes, there is something else.
So are we looking for approval of this with the changes?
Yes.
We'd also, it's not it's
Oh,
a
we're still-
form
Sorry, Jim, we're still on this one.
that we have to rescind, which is the teacher transportation agreement. And that is the form that, I do have one sitting on my desk right now. And if the board so moves, I would advise that person that they could not drive these
So do we-
students.
Do we know how how much this is gonna cost us
No, I do not.
in buses and
I do not.
transportations and things that may have been occurring that are no longer going to be occurring? And what issues we're going to create between now and the end of the year that have already been scheduled and things like that, that are now gonna have to be quickly reworked? I take it not.
I would guess, I do not know, we haven't analyzed that, no, but clearly, we
Something
have
on
an
Saturday.
ongoing we have clearly got events going on Saturdays, we've got just discussing the DI events going on, which are almost all parent transportations. We have a ski team, which I think is still active, I'm not positive of that.
I would imagine you have one with the wrestling.
Wrestling team going to
Because,
the New Englands.
because they're not like that they're gonna, it's just one wrestler. I think Lori said maybe it's a couple, maybe it's two.
She said it was just one student.
So, we're gonna hire a bus to
No,
move one
if-
student now.
if- if
Well,
it
parents
was a
and
parent
transport.
Transporting their own child who had $100,000-$300,000 insurance, then they could
Transport.
transport their own child. They cannot transport any other child. So that wouldn't be an issue. The issue would be if there was a practice of going to a DI meet and doubling up 2 or 3 kids in a car that I were driving with my kid, then we could not give permission to do that. That would be in violation of your policy now. We'd have to tell the parent, well, you can transport your own child as long as you have 100, 300,000. However, you could not transport a child who's not your own. You have a question from the audience, Mr. Chair?
Good.
Nathan Cooper, CHS. So like, for example, I run the Youth and Government program, and we run a mock government up at the State House. There's a training session essentially that we do in March, and it's an all-day event. And traditionally, I meet the students up there, the parents, drop their students off there. We meet up and do the session. And then in April, we do an overnight session where we take a bus up there. So I just wanted to take the opportunity, so under this policy, would we need additional bus transportation for the March trip? Is that how that would work?
We say the parents bring them up, or the parents bring them back?
Yeah, the parents bring them back.
Just their child?
Just as far as, to my knowledge.
Well,
Right, if it's just their child,
Just their child.
it's not an issue.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure before
It'd be
I,
against policy for them to bring more than one
more
child
than
that's
one
not theirs.
child.
Yeah.
Okay, I
But
just wanted to.
it becomes an issue for you as the chaperoning employee.
Correct.
That when you see that child get in another car,
Correct,
you have to stop it.
correct.
But that is the current policy as well.
Right,
So there's no change to that.
Okay.
correct.
That is the policy right now, that
Yep.
only
Okay.
a parent can transport their own child.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because it was coming up, so, thank you.
That's why I asked at the last meeting when this was brought up, how many situations are like this, and you had said there's a few. Yeah.
So
Well,
there's-
we know that at the high school, we know there is the transportation of kids sometimes to a separate setting, not the CTE setting, but other settings which kids go to by the teacher who does the alternatives program. And we know that, there are certain teams and certain activities which we do not provide bus transportation for, such as DI, such as robotics, such as ski team, that it is understood that only the parent can only transport their own child,
Which is a situation now.
which
So-
is what we're doing now.
So, Campbell played in basketball in Berlin last night.
Mhm.
And a parent and 5 or 6 students wanted to go to the game, and one of the parents said, "I'll drive."
Mhm.
But it's outside of the school, they make all these arrangements or whatever, they get in the car and they drive to a school function. They violate the policy?
No.
Why?
It's the students that are participating in that event that this falls under, the way I see it.
So one parent couldn't drive 6
Five players.
students or 5 players.
Couldn't drive players.
There's a difference here, if I may.
It's a difference if you're
5
participating or if
players are
you're
participating in a
observed.
school-sponsored event.
Yep.
5 students who are going
Wanna
with
go
the
to it.
neighbor, they're not covered under the school-sponsored event.
I just can't imagine for the ski team or any of these, extracurricular activities that if you have a group of 20 students coming from a small town, that 20 parents are driving to this location and that parents aren't carpooling
It
and.
puts the responsibility onto the coaching staff or the advisors for that group to make sure that that's not taking place, because if it is their responsibility. Those as advisors, those as coaches, they sign on in those positions to be responsible for those students that are participating in a school-sponsored event. And part of that responsibility is to make sure that they're all getting on the bus, or if they're taking alternate transportation, that it abides by the school policy. It's one heck of a responsibility, understood, but
So
it is their responsibility.
I do think we should clarify again, I know we talked about this last time we met and we talked about this the first time. This isn't something that the school board has a choice in the matter. This isn't a new rule that the school board is implementing, correct? This is,
Piece with the parent transportation is current policy.
it's current policy. And is that,
The change is really
that's
around-
based off of like a state or a federal
Well,
regulation?
The major piece regarding the, for instance, a staff member using his or her vehicle to transport students to a site other than one of our campuses, can do that by your policy right now. The state, however, has, through their bus program, student transportation, the state trooper, there's one state trooper, by the way, that oversees all of this, and he has come out with a statement that those individuals transporting do need a bus driver's license.
Okay, so
So that's a major change, if you will. If I were to do an executive summary, there really isn't much change here, except that piece. Now, the financial impact, it may have some financial impact on the district. I haven't analyzed that piece yet, to be
But
honest.
there's nothing we can do about it as a district. It's something that, something that's
We
come
can't
down
allow,
from the
because
state.
that, if something were to occur after that opinion, after that directive comes out of the DOE, we would not be covered on primaries.
Right.
Because
I just
they're
want
gonna say
to
you're
clarify
using
that,
a
because I feel
unlicensed
like,
driver.
right, I just want to
Right.
make sure that's clear, because I think that there's going to be some backlash from this, and I want to make certain, when we're defending what we have,
Right.
negotiated here, that this is out of our control.
Superintendent's following the directive of DOE.
Well, call the superintendent.
Yeah, but he's following the directive, I would say, anyway.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
That's
So
the
I just
directive
want to
of
make
DOE.
sure that,
This is not a board decision, unless you want to be in violation of current interpretation of the RSA.
right, and that's what I just want to clarify. This
So
isn't
you-
the school board making up this
This is
policy
just you
because we're
adopting a
mean
policy that
today.
is consistent with current
Right, we have to.
interpretation. And I want to say interpretation, because it is
We
interpretation
could
of
be
the
changing it again in
RSA.
2 weeks.
It could change. And so you don't have much choice right now except to take the current interpretation as forwarded to us by our attorney through the state police who are currently interpreting the RSA.
Thank you.
So that's kind of where we are, folks.
All right.
With regard to, I just looked up quickly on the state bus drivers, and there's not a lot of information, but it does say one thing that's really kind of interesting, that if you want to get a bus driver's license, you have to currently be employed by a bus company.
Oh, interesting.
It does say that, yeah. Yeah, it says, school bus certificate, you must be currently employed and on the roster of a school bus company. So, now that they say that, I remember we used to have a mixed-use vehicle in a previous district, and the only way we could get somebody to drive it was 1 year, the independent bus company agreed to put him on their roster, but then their insurance company said, no, there's no way you can do that. So we had to take that person off of it, so there was no way we could do that. So it's pretty much a permanent employment act for the bus companies.
That's why the directive kind of flies in the face. I didn't want to say that, but they have to be employed by a bus company. in order to
And
get a-
on their
a bu-
roster.
And on the active roster.
Active roster.
Active roster, and they have to go through all
Sounds like
the
something you need to
investigative,
get to Frank.
Corey's.
We have one of those, though, at least one. We do. We have an employee who's a bus driver.
But she's employed by the bus company during that, when she leaves here and drives a school bus, she's an employee of the bus company then, at that point.
Correct.
Right.
But I'm just saying, if
But she, yeah.
she was looking for some extra money, we
But in
need
order
to
to get, like,
transport
for a teacher,
for a
that's
teacher,
where it
right?
becomes problematic.
Yep.
For-
What, they can't teach and drive a bus at the same time?
they can't have two employees.
With Google Classroom
Can't you go?
nowadays.
Smart board up there, speaking right into it. You want one-to-one, that brings it to a new level. You can spend almost a year in space, you can teach from a school bus.
So I think it's
I'm willing to
gonna,
give it a shot.
I think it's gonna be important that we get the message out, or the superintendent gets the message out to the schools, like tomorrow, that there may be some that are gonna have to find other means of transportation for Saturday.
I also think you probably need to start trying to negotiate a different rate for smaller buses. Don't think we need to.
We have that, Well, I mean, we have a shuttle rate, it depends on where it is and how many students, I mean, we have all of that embedded in the current school bus contract.
But
It's just-
for co-curricular type of
Yeah,
activities?
sure, of course, yep.
Yeah, I'm sure there's like vans.
Just for the record, the superintendent has already reviewed this change with the administrative team, but there's been no formal directive.
Right.
There will as soon as we vote.
Yep.
Choice.
Make a motion that we accept the changes to policy EEAG.
Is that with the changes that we discussed this evening also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained.
Make a motion that we rescind transportation form EEAGR.
Teacher trip.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. That'll bring us to the draft for DBJ, Transfer of Appropriations.
I'll take this one, Mr. Chair, thank you from the superintendent. Through the superintendent recommendation on the transfer of appropriation, the current policy states by way of summary is the district administration, SAU, can approve transfers up to any amount. All transfer requests can be approved. It does cap out for the BA at $1,500, and then any subsequent amount over that can be approved by the superintendent. And by RSA, we are required, as you receive each month, a copy of a report that shows all the transfers that we as district administrators have approved. This policy that I'm recommending to you is a little subtle change that I'll bring out to your attention. It gives the superintendent the authority to approve it caps the superintendent up to $5,000, but it allows the superintendent to designate another individual in district office to do that. That would be the BA. To approve up to $5,000, and then any request for a transfer appropriation over $5,000, that would go to the superintendent, would bring that to the school board for your approvals. So, and then the report would still be given to you each month by RSA. We're required to give you and show you all transfers. So what does this accomplish? It gives us here a little bit of authority to get those done, budget transfers done. It also caps it so that any transfers over $5,000, I can tell you my 3-year experience here, we have not had a transfer request, line item request over $5,000.
Did the superintendent today do a transfer of over 5,000?
Yep. Your policy today. You can't believe what he's approved.
I mean, right now, he can approve
Right now, it's
anything, so you're putting a
mine is
cap on
capped
it.
at $1,500, and then any amount over that, to any amount, can be approved by the superintendent. So there is no cap right now. It's just, it's a conversation I've had with our auditors. It's something that they have not only requested to make sure we adhere to the reporting requirement of the RSA, but auditors always like to see caps. They don't like to see an open-ended approval
So
process.
you report those each month to us anyway.
Right. So again, by way, the superintendent has the authority to designate his authority out to anything under $5,000, and anything over $5,000 would require pre-approval of the board prior to that transfer.
Just one question. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, all kidding aside. I just have one question. In the case of an emergency, could the superintendent transfer money immediately? Let's say, I can't think of it. Let's say the entire heating system broke down in
Right.
GMS.
You'd look at the BA and say, you go find the money, just go ahead and spend it, and we'd go with the
So we'd
appropriation.
we'd notify the school board
There was an
chair
emergency expenditure.
that we had to
and
have an emergency expenditure, and then we'd find the money expended and
Right.
get,
And then get the transfer.
if there was, but we would still notify the school board chair at that point.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, we would
So
just
it's a
have
boiler situation.
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah.
Right. That
I
we were
can't
gonna
think
go
of
ahead.
something. If you had if you had a flood or something like
Yeah.
that.
I mean, we would still appropriate the monies and then draw that line over and then subsequently come to the board.
Right.
But we would notify the board, as we always would, on that situation, sure. I think that just satisfies the, we always we work towards satisfying the external auditors, and this is one, I think, that does just that.
I'll make a motion to accept policy DBJ, transfer of appropriations, as written.
Actually,
We're not
first
accepting the
reading,
policy
isn't
now.
it?
Yeah, it's
No,
first.
Not there yet.
Because it's a total rewrite, it has to go through,
Paul-
well, you
Paul.
can approve it if you want.
Yeah, it's got to go through a couple of readings before
But
it's,
you can approve it as a first reading if you want to.
yeah.
Right.
Make a motion then, help Nicole, approve it as a first reading,
Approve it at first reading, there we have it.
and next time they can do it as a second reading, and then it gets a,
Maybe we can.
Maybe we can.
that's right, maybe you can.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Not? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 400. And we have another first read on student activity funds management.
Again, if I may, Mr. Chair, through the superintendent, this is a recommended, there are two pieces. We added a second piece from your first receipt of the policy change, which is DFH, Student Activity Funds Management. Also by board policy, I'm required to bring forth to you for your approval as an addendum, if you will, to that policy, is a guideline and procedures manual that will accompany the policy. By way of background, in my 3 years here, and before that as well, each year the external, our auditors, financial auditors, have made certain citations regarding the student activity funds, and specific to certain areas of accountability, separation of duties, that you do not have the same person doing, for instance, deposits as well as an authorized signer on the checking account, reporting requirements to the school board, and actually the school board approving each year, reviewing all the student activity fund accounts and approving those accounts for their acceptance for the responsibility of the school district. So what I've attempted to do, and rather lengthy, and I apologize, that both the policy and the accompanying guideline and procedure manual is to really tighten up, if you will, as you've heard in the past and you hear again, $500,000 flowed through the student activity funds last year in this district, and we have currently a one paragraph policy. So it really, what I've attempted to do, and I will admit that I've kind of gone the opposite now. I have really put a lot of meat and substance into it, but it will give, I believe, our staff some across-the-board guidelines and pretty strict requirements in how we process and proceed with student activity funds.
I just ask a question with clarification on disposition of inactive accounts. I know we talked about this the last time.
Right.
And you put in here, the graduating class accounts cease to exist at graduation. Then they can decide what they want to do with it.
Correct.
And then the next paragraph says, such funds are not designated, and for all other inactive, no activity for 1 year, student accounts, the faculty advisor may be asked what is to be done. So it can be inactive still for a year? You're saying it ceases at graduation, but then it can go on for a year.
I mean, that is not, it can remain inactive then for a year, even though, again, we have no agency fiduciary responsibility to those funds. We can allow, in fact, I had a conversation with Mrs. Rothaus on this, particularly because it's going to affect, obviously, the high school only.
Yeah.
And I said, and I did review the policy with her, and I said, this requirement, my preference is, and they're doing it right now, based at my request, is that when that class graduates, that they've already made the designation of those funds, which I would highly, highly recommend that those funds go to the district, the class, the graduated class,
Right.
to the graduate. We have no responsibility, because again, student activity funds, by the nature of the definition of it, and our agency fiduciary responsibility ceases when they're no longer our responsibility as district students.
So the class has to remove the monies at the end of the year.
Yeah. And I can clarify that a little bit. I'll tighten that language up, but it's highly advisable. I mean, some of the classes in my 3 years here. have had
And I agree,
$50,000.
I agree, we should have no part of it once they graduate.
They get a check and they can go
Right,
off
but
and do it.
it's just that it reads that they can't have it, then they have to
Possibly
designate.
give them a year to do that. I'll clean that language up.
The other question I have is, what happens with the money for the 8th graders? Does it follow them to the high school?
I'm assuming it does, because I know the 4th grade falls into middle school
An individual basis or over a class basis?
class.
Nothing falls on an individual basis.
All right, so we should just make sure that that's in the policy, that monies should follow the class from school to school?
I mean, you
For
can,
the-
but it depends on, the student activity fund, in the description of the student activity fund. I can't.
But we should not have, this is, okay, we're going to clarify this and bring some structure to it, and let's bring the structure into it. We don't want to have open-ended, you're trying to, you see, in this case, you're saying that as a student in high school ends his career, that money needs to go.
Because it's a class
However,
of 20.
the LMS class, the LMS school is building up all this money from 8th graders that may or may not be
Okay.
moving on, or the money's not moving forward.
By example, you have a band account. That band account, money stays in the band account regardless who the students are that are involved with band.
But what about, let's just use an
Okay,
example
let
of
me,
the,
just- if I can, the class of 2017, or class of 2016 doesn't exist June 30th. The middle school class of LMS still exists. So that's why I'm saying, I can't tell you that it needs to travel with them, because I need to look at the account, and by description of that account, what's the intent? Is that the upcoming class of 20, whatever the numbers work out, the class of 2018?
no, I understand, I'm just asking the question.
Right, so it's not, all accounts do not travel with the population from one year to the next, depending on the intent and purpose of that student activity fund. So that's why I think it's important.
So the question I have then is, understanding that, then we need to make sure that the accounts that are set up, that the accounts are set up correctly with that understanding. Because in this case, you're saying the 4th grade money moves to the middle school.
I don't know.
Well,
You look,
he's
I don't have the answer for that.
president, so he would know. And
It's
so,
it's only a few dollars.
I understand it's only a few dollars, and that's, but what I'm saying is that inevitably, at the end of the school year, at LMS, they'll have about $60,000 in their accounts. Now, I don't know how they accumulated $60,000. I can only imagine the classes moved along and the money stayed. And at the end of June 30th, with only 3 classes in the school, because the other class hasn't moved into the building, we'll have $100 and some odd thousand in checking accounts.
I don't think we have that much in LMS, not according to the report. I think it was floating around, if I'm not mistaken, around
No,
30,000, something like that.
In GMS, LMS, a lot of that money is in and out.
Well, I understand it, but it's not in and out because they have a substantial balance in their accounts. Much more than they need.
If it's in a class account, a graduating class account, I would think, I mean, the graduating class of 2017 is a graduating class of 2017, so it's through the whole district. So if
Right.
it goes by the graduating through the district, it
Well,
would
I
carry
just-
any
what-
school through the
Right.
district.
I mean, you could have a 3rd grade student activity fund account set up. In that 3rd grade student activity, this is by example, this isn't, that 3rd grade, you could have GMS 3rd grade account, student activity fund. And that account is intended solely to accept money in from parents and students to support a field trip to go to Y.
Right.
So any money left over at the end of the year, by description of that account, stays there.
Right, it's not a class account.
It's not a class account. However, if you've got an incoming for grade 1, and they decide, we want to set up the class of 2024,
Right.
and that money
That's
is
gonna follow
going
from
to
school to
follow them
school.
until they hit June 30th, 2024. And
I guess
the money goes-
my point is,
For the next meeting, can you get with GMS to LMS? I mean, those are 2 schools we're talking about, and how their funds work. Because I think if you find like LMS, John, they probably have a ton of money in here right now, collecting money for the Washington DC trip.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, like you said, that's a floating
Right.
fund. It's gonna come in and then it
There's money
goes.
left. I understand.
And I understand what you're saying, it's like, what happens to, like, monies that the 8th grade raised, does it fall in the freshmen? I would think it does. Can we find that out from GMS and LMS, what happens to their funds?
I can try.
Okay.
It's.
All I'm saying is you're doing
If
a
not,
lot
I can ask both principals, and I'm sure they can
All I'm
explain.
saying is-
I'll give you, maybe not to the extent of the description that we should have, because we should have that information available to you right now. And that's why I can begin that process and just find out what happens to that money. I can begin the process to get the description from the principals, because I need to do that anyway, so I'll just make that a higher priority.
If I were to venture to guess, I would say it's minimal, what monies, if any monies, are left over from those classes.
It's the intent of the
It's
SFA.
been a 6-year battle, but I'm telling you guys, there's a substantial amount of money at the end of every school year in the LMS accounts and the CHS accounts.
Yeah, but like the LMS account is for 5th, 6th, and 7th grade?
What's for the school? It's just like,
Right,
it's just
but-
like for the high school, it's
So
for
we're-
the schools.
We're just concerned what happens to the 8th grade and what happens to 4th grade.
We should be concerned about, because he talks about inactive accounts, or accounts where students have moved on. Okay, so,
That'd be the senior class.
if we're making a policy on those types of accounts, okay, and I'll use yearbooks as an example. There was monies collected for yearbooks that inevitably the district paid the bill for.
Where? At
Paid for the
LMS?
yearbooks.
Where?
I'm telling you
No, but what,
that there were student monies accounted, and the school board ended up paying the bill 5 years later because the bill was outstanding. And they couldn't track where the money was, in that sense. Not saying there's anything bad about it, but it was a school board bill that got paid by the school board. It says in here, we will not accept these debts, but we had to, because we've got a great policy. I don't have a problem with policy, but we don't know what we're making a policy on, because we don't have any information. And I applaud Frank, because he's done more in these 3 years. I've been arguing this for 6 years. To deaf ears that it was a big issue, and the accountants would say it was a big issue. So we're much further along than we've ever been. But I think we need to make sure we have a true understanding of the ins and outs of these accounts. If for no other reason that when we sign off on this policy, and the BA says, I have a starting point from today that says, I know how these accounts are going to be flowing, and this is how they're going to count. So when you vote this policy in, it will be able to be followed in a manner that is correct. And everybody can be held accountable for that policy, or any misgivings or whatever, any issues have been resolved to a point where we have a starting point and we can just look forward instead of ever worrying about what was behind them. We'll never be able to do that with this policy and the way these funds are now. So with that in mind, I wouldn't be able to support this policy as written, because I don't know what we're supporting and we're okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
While I appreciate Mr. York's appreciation of the effort here, without having a policy that describes in detail what is or is not a student activity fund, I can tell you that my understanding of student activity accounts in this district are not to the definition of what a student activity account is. There are a lot of accounts that you get on that list that will not qualify as student activity accounts. And consequently, once a policy is set, then I now have the authority from the policy of the school board to go forth and eliminate those accounts as student activity funds. They are no longer the responsibility. We do no longer have that fiduciary responsibility. Without that, the current policy right now, it's somewhat vague. So to pass the litmus test, if you will, of what accounts are truly a student activity account, it goes probably on a weekly argument that I have with administrators, and not an argument, but a lively discussion. What is a student activity account? And this policy clearly defines what a student activity account is, and I hate to be so simplistic, it's money raised for students, by students, for students, and to the benefit solely of those students. This policy and those procedures clearly bring definition to that, and then consequently, then I can go through my review of all of those accounts and cull, if you will, out those accounts that do not meet the definition of the school board policy. Right now, it's my opinion, but this brings that definition to my ability to go and review that.
And I would disagree with the BA, that if we have a policy that is generic in process, and as a school board, we've asked him to undertake the process of unraveling it, that he has all the authority necessary through the superintendent, because we can direct it to the superintendent, to do that process under the present policies. He doesn't need the new policy. There's plenty of policies that allow him to go in there, take control of the situation, and begin to manage it to the board's, so the board can make sure that the policy that we're being asked to approve is the correct wording, correct policy, based on what is found. And I don't think we need a policy to instruct the school administration to get these accounts under some sort of control.
I'm just reading through the activity fund guidelines and procedures.
Again, Mr. Chair, that was intended for tonight, just for discussion.
Yep.
I'm not looking for any action on this. This is a process that's going to take us through a few meetings to get through.
What do you feel is missing, John?
I don't know what it's missing. And as I read through the policy may be perfect. However, we don't know what's in the accounts. So, the policy won't be approved today because it needs to go through review, first reading, second reading, and then approved. So it's at least 3 school board meetings away.
Yep.
Is it the argument of the BA that he's going to wait until the end of April to begin the process of being able to get these accounts underhand because there's not a policy written or approved?
I think the BA's already started the
This is like when your parent
process.
calls you by your given name, Francis. He's now referring to me as BA, so I know I must be in a little bit of trouble.
I believe the BA, Frank,
I wasn't sure who he was referring to.
I think he's already started the process.
Can I make one comment?
This process is ongoing. It's been ongoing for 3 years.
Yes, it has.
If I could make a comment, Plodzik and Sanderson come in every year and does an audit of all of our accounts, including student activities accounts. And from what I hear, Frank, I won't call you the BA, what I hear Francis saying is that...
He's really in trouble now.
Is that he has had some pointers, I won't say findings, during the annual audit, and but it's not to say that we don't have accountability to the current funds we have. We do. And we do maintain records, and the auditors come in and review all of our records, and the auditors haven't found it to the point where I don't believe they've found an actual finding.
No.
So I do think we do have the audits report, and we do have the auditing of all the funds that we currently have. So I do think that's an annualized thing. In terms of Mr. York's question, what I would say is, I think we have to give definition to what the board believes is accurate when we say a student account, a procedure, a process, for the BA to be able to go in there and really cull out those that are not student activities and should not be included in that. If we ask the BA to go forward and cull them out without the board defining what the board considers to be student activity accounts, I believe it puts the BA in an unenviable position. So I think we have to give the BA the actual policy, which has definition and the teeth to be able to go in and do that. I'm not saying, however, that we can't get some sort of information about what the current state of our student activity accounts are to the board in a more timely fashion than waiting for 2 months. We can certainly do that. I don't want to say in how long, but we certainly can go to the principals and give you a current state of what we have for activity accounts, and we can certainly answer the question regarding, at the end of the year, if it's not a class of 2022 account, if it's the DI account, what happens to that money in the 8th grade? And we can certainly give you an accounting of that. So I guess what I'm trying to do is to broker an agreement that we can give you a current state of the system, and I don't want to say when, whether it's 3 weeks or 5 weeks.
No, I can have it next meeting.
Well,
3 weeks from now.
Okay, 3 years ago, they're going to bring out the archives here. So 3 years ago, we did get a detailed spreadsheet of these accounts, and they were as long as the table.
A lot of them.
There was a lot of them. And the instruction at that time was to review and close a lot of those accounts in whatever process the administration and the BA felt was correct, under existing school policy. We didn't change our policy, under existing school policy, because he is correct. Those funds, if they meet the criteria of raised by students, for students, we have very little control over it, other than to make sure that the money is tracked correctly.
Well, that's,
And really, that's all it is. But if it's other types of monies that was raised through, selling brownies, Coke, sodas, this, that, and the other thing, well, that's different. I don't know if that's actually explained in the policy was given, but I didn't read that through there. So, again, I'm back to the thing of, we need to know what the list of accounts are. If there's, let's just say there's 50 accounts between the 2 schools or 3 schools, and 45 of them are correct, all we need to do is have processes in place that allows the SAU to monitor those accounts through the existing processes administrator and whatever policies that they need and procedures they need to be able to make that to occur, then we do. And the 5 that don't, then we need to find a way to bring resolution to those. And it may or may not be with the school board even getting involved in it, because it may not be a school board issue. Or maybe you have to be resolved some other way of, we have to go back and track down a bunch of students and ask them what they want to do with the money. Because it is very specific that we don't have a lot of responsibility to this, other than the fact that we have to be able to oversee it from afar and make sure it's being tracked and managed correctly. Because if it's not, whether it's our responsibility or not, we're going to be the ones that get in trouble for not providing that process. So that's really in my mind, that is the issue at hand. Okay, so I don't think what we need to do is a lot, because I believe that, well, I know for a fact, Frank was the one that put together the very nice report for us to review 3 years ago. So he probably has it relatively available on his cloud and can probably get that information to us.
If I may,
I'll play nice in the sandbox now, Frank.
No, I just want to show.
Parallel players, hold on.
BJ, Mr. Martin, my predecessor, but, just for clarification, I in no way tonight, I can tell you that the principals through their administrative assistants, we have extremely tight control on all the funds, and student activity funds. We have a software program, the 3 administrative assistants that are responsible at each of the 3 schools do an excellent job. This is an issue about historically, and I've always said in this district, and I've heard it in my previous, it's the way we've always done it. If I had $1 for that, I'd be sending you postcards at Christmas time from Aruba. I'm not, I'm here. The definition that I want to bring here tonight is just that. There are some accounts that are listed as student activity funds that absolutely are not student activity funds. We have the principals to their administrative assistant, we've gotten rid, we've closed out, they've moved monies, they have, and maybe I can give you an update from that nice spreadsheet I did 3 years ago, I appreciate that. I can give you an update on that, and so the control, the knowledge that we have about student activity accounts between 3 years ago and today is way down the road. What this is doing is, and I think I prefaced my comments, is this is going way down the road, trying to make sure that the vulnerable area of the district's funds, the responsibility that we have to these funds, is ironclad, so that it's beyond reproach. So I can more than happy bring a report to you in 2 weeks that shows the changes that we've made over 3 years in eliminating a lot of those student activity accounts, and I will also show you, there was a column in that report, if you recall, that I gave my impression as to whether or not those funds were truly student activity funds.
Let's use, I use an example to agree with you. 2 funds. The New York trip every year is not a student activity fund. And the trip that the students are going to Hawaii is not a student activity fund, because the money is not being raised by students. Some of the money
It
is
is to the
being
parents.
raised to the students. But parents are spending monthly into that account, whether for the kids going to Hawaii or whatever. So that can't be considered a student activity account. However, for going to New York, they're collecting $70,000 or $80,000 for those students. And to go to Hawaii, for every one of those students going, when there's 40 of them, they're collecting $3,000 for those students. And it's not a student activity fund. We are responsible for those funds. Even though it's being collected in the administrative office, that's $120,000 for going to Hawaii, plus we've added the Spanish trips and stuff like that. In New York, it's not a student activity fund. Now, the kids fundraise through various things, but they're not getting anywhere near the level to pay for that trip through all raised funds. So there is fiduciary responsibility on the board's part on those accounts, and we should have better monitoring of those accounts.
And I think the BA and I would absolutely agree with that last statement. We should have better monitoring on those accounts. And I would reiterate the BA statement that we do believe that Frank's statement that
Stripes don't come
they are
Francis.
well monitored. But my concern, quite candidly, is there is an awful lot of money that's collected that passes through those funds as checks, and there's also a substantial amount of money that's collected as cash. And I would like to ensure that all of those funds are properly oversighted. And I believe that defining whether they're student activity or non-student activity is only step one on a long road. I believe the most important step is to make sure we have actual processes that are in accordance with current practices, best practices for handling cash, and make sure that they're deposited. And there's to that point in this policy, I don't know, I honestly didn't read the old policy.
Right.
But adequate segregation of duties, internal controls for cash. Adequate segregation of duties between employees is imperative in the handling of cash. One person should be responsible for preparing the bank deposits, deposits should be prepared, et cetera. There's very explicit detailing here. I think that is the kind of language that we really have to make sure that we not only have ironclad, but that we also enforce, and that's it. There's no exceptions to it. So I do agree with much of what Mr. York has said.
I do as well, Mr. York.
Mr.
Call
York?
him John.
Mr. York.
You can use John.
I will address the issues and bring us some further clarity to both the policy and the guidelines and procedures, and bring forward, as part of my financial report next meeting, some more detail on the student activity funds. It'll be a long meeting, but we'll get to it.
Good. I'd say it'd be a long meeting.
Yeah.
Were there any questions on the manifest? You have signatures on there now. Public input, community input?
Just have a question.
The statement for public.
Okay.
Tina Harrison, 9 Lund Street. I just wondered when we might see an approved school calendar for next year.
You want to respond to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a draft school calendar that we put together that I'll be sharing with the administrative team next week, and then I'll bring it to the board at the next meeting that we have. All I can say is we have a draft school calendar right now. I don't want to get into it because it's just a draft.
Okay.
But you should have it at the next school board meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Should.
That's it. I'll just check.
Thank you. And did you have something?
Yeah, I would just like to say, I joined the district in, I think it was August 4th, as I recall, and this is about my 7th month that I've been with the district. And I know that there is an election coming up, and we may have the same members sitting here at our next meeting, we may not. And I would just like to express my sincere appreciation to all of the board members for their professionalism, for their courtesy, for making my superintendency here at Litchfield a very, very enjoyable and very, very, well, just a really good experience for the superintendent. And I certainly hope we are all sitting here, but if not, I wish, if one of us is not, nothing but the best in the future.
Thank you. All right. With that, I'll bring us a non-public session, RSA 91-A:311, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against them, unless the employee affected, one, has a right to a meeting, and two, request that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person or public employee. C, matters which have been discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Make a motion.
Second.
Aye.
Yes. Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Aye, yes.
Aye, aye, aye.
Aye, aye, aye.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not talking about you.